All right, here we go. Playoff time. And you might be wondering, where are we?
Finally on location. Took all season, but
Yeah,
I guess
yeah,
ratings are bad enough that they got to cancel the last few weeks of the show. You got to blow out the budget. At least the producers sprung a little bit. I'm glad I got Miami instead of
yeah.
Seattle, but hey, it looks pretty nice for December. I mean, not even in a jacket.
Yes,
Like,
totally. It's totally nice here. Miami weather, Seattle weather, it's kind of the same nowadays, if you didn't know. And I know Green Bay's coming to town, but they're pretty screwed if they're used to cold weather, which it actually is supposed to be cold here. But this is totally in real time, nice, barely any clouds.
beautiful day for football today. And
Exactly.
hey, we made it all this way. Luckily, we're not done for our seasons, even if the show is done after this week.
Sure.
I mean, what can we do? A lot of the fantasy pools get slimmed down, unless you play in a lot of leagues. Normally, only 60% of the teams, 50% of the teams are left come playoffs. And another week, that's going to get cut in half. And pretty hard to justify listening to fantasy content when your team's eliminated. There might be one or two out there that'll tune in, and good for you. You're the diehards
Yeah.
of this sport, and we spent so much money on the travels, nothing was left for our clothing budget for the week. So they
Yeah.
said,
Yeah. Yeah.
just just go out there, feel comfortable. We don't want you guys to be itching it up in those nice outfits. So just relax.
My
It's a
luggage didn't
last
even make
show.
it. So this is literally, I've been wearing the same outfit for 4 days. So this
All your stuff's stuck in a
I
pod.
think yeah, exactly. I'm waiting for it to open up, and I don't know where it is. So best of luck to me, I guess.
It's in storage. You can get it at any time. That's the added advantage of a pod. You don't have to know where you're shipping
Yeah,
it
I
to.
guess so.
They'll just put it in a warehouse in Yakima. Not quite. That was an old
Yeah.
ad growing up as a kid. It was a Mariners ad. Socks would disappear in a warehouse in Yakima. But we got a
Classic.
couple weeks of fantasy left. How'd you do in your teams with your teams this year? You did all right.
Yeah,
You
I mean,
back. Didn't give RJ the number one pick in our league, so that was good at
I
least.
that was huge. I honestly, what's crazy with the two record leagues is that if I had won the median, I missed the median by 1 point. I would have, instead of giving him the third pick, I would have given him like the sixth pick. It's like so like fifth, sixth pick. It's such a difference of like half a point at 1 point that it can make. I made it 2 out of 3 leagues though. The one that we did, I didn't, but I made a late surge, so I think I'm in a good place in that league. But my main league, I snuck in by a point, and now I am projected the most. So we'll see what happens. The projections mean nothing to me, but I to your point, like this part of the playoffs, if you're looking for advice and you're scrambling to add people, I'm pretty sure you're not going to make it very far because your team should be set in stone, and the guys that got you there are probably the guys you're going to start because you're here for a reason.
Yeah, I mean they should be, but things happen. Injuries happen. Guys like
Sure.
Evan Ingram go down in the middle of the week. Like, oh yeah, we think he's going to be fine one day. The next day, oh, he's on IR. He's done for the year. Got a torn labrum in his shoulder. I mean, that was a wild start to this week.
Yeah.
Tight ends have kind of been coming out of nowhere. Some of them that looked really good for a while now aren't getting work. So I think there's always some spots, maybe a flex. Guys like Jerry Judy coming out of nowhere. He's like, I mean, I gotta start him.
Yeah.
Like, do I start him over Cooper Cup? Like, I just can't do that. I gotta play Cooper Cup. But then
Yeah.
that game on Thursday
You
was
have nice last night.
ugly. I mean, it was a
Yeah,
bath on
Thursday.
Thursday night. Like, I
Yeah.
luckily only had Kyron Williams playing, so I'll take it. He kind of survived. I would say it was a mediocre fantasy day all in all, but an exceptional game from him from a football standpoint. I mean, tons of touches. If you're in a point per carry league, as some
God.
I've seen, like you definitely liking that. And then, I think he had 14 points for me in my league, a PPR league. So when you get that without any touchdowns, you're gonna take it. A game with no touchdowns, a guy gets double digits, like you can't be mad at that guy. So glad to
30 carries is so much. Like it was so funny because they're like, we're gonna integrate Blake Corum because we need to give Kyron Williams some breaks, and it's like 30 carries still, and we
yeah.
saw a little bit of Blake Corum, and this is wild.
Blake Corum was working in evenly until he took that pass and set it in the air like he's playing volleyball. I mean, he just
Yeah, that
literally
was bad.
popped it up. It easily could have been a pick. Easily could have been a pick six. I mean, that could have changed the game. There were a few balls that could have been picked that were just bouncing around and just not enough footing to get a
Weather,
catch in that.
yeah,
I mean, it looked like it was bad watching it, and then they'd take some different angles, and you're like, "Holy shit, that looks disgusting!"
yeah.
Like I went to my fireplace and turned it on because I was getting cold just watching the game. My buddy Anthony was
I
there,
I
and I
I
was
think
like, "Cool."
whenever they do the lights, right when they go underneath the light, you're like, oh, there's the rain.
"Oh my goodness!" Like it was so
Yeah,
bad they were letting people have umbrellas. Like I've never seen people with umbrellas at a game. Like, what how much extra do you have to pay to be able to sit with an umbrella? Like, you can't
crazy.
just sit there in the regular seats. Like the person behind you's like, what the fuck? Like I paid for
I
my seat,
know.
looking at an umbrella. Like this is some
Right.
bullshit, you know. So
I know.
luckily, I got a couple of
How
teams that got buys, so
yeah.
happy about that. You know, they're kind of strong teams, but kind of floundering around. You know, I got one that's got Justin Jefferson, Drake London, Devontae Adams. So strong receiving core, but it's not PPR. Got Isaiah Pacheco and Saquon, Jaden Daniels. So it's a good squad. I'm just not quite sure when they're gonna peak, but hey, you just gotta win 2 weeks. Guess I got as good a chance as anyone in that situation. You know, it was a rough last month though. I mean, I think I lost more games in
Yeah.
December. It feels like November, December than I did the rest of the fantasy season. I had some weeks where I lost 5 out of 6 games, 4 out of 6 games, 3 out of 6 games. I mean, those just
Right.
I forget how bad it feels when you lose like that. I had such a good start to the year and kind of am limping in, so I'm hoping that I can get a championship. You know, that pretty much makes any season a win if you can get at least to the championship game. You know, hard enough to win championships, but if you can get there, at least it feels like a success. And most leagues pay out second place too. I mean, it's pretty brutal if it's just winner take all. I'm still trying to collect. I got leagues that people still owe me dues. Like, I got people I got to
Yeah.
chase down a 12-year-old for $20. Like, got to knock on my neighbor's
That's the
door
tough
for
part.
20. I have one neighbor that sent me $20
It's
for
like,
the league, but she didn't send her husband's money. It's like you can't just send it together. Like, what's that about?
come
Like,
on.
I gotta
Yeah,
ask the other guy for
that's
money.
my least favorite thing of being commissioner is like, all right, guys, pay up. And they're like, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. You're like, dude, like, this is nothing. Most of the, like, yeah, it's big money league. I think there's some people are like, oh, give me a little bit if you need to. Fine. But like $20, come on, just fork it over. You made a promise. This is how it works.
Yeah, no, it's especially tough. There's one league where I'm a co-commissioner, but I'm basically the treasurer. So it's like I'm trying to get this money. Like I got money that's supposed to be paid out, like paying out a weekly winner each week for it. So it's overly complicated dynasty league with a bunch of bullshit over tanking. I got multiple teams tanking. There's not much you can do about tanking. It's like I've finally decided you can ridicule them. You can put weekly bonus in for the highest scoring team. So hopefully they go for that. And then we have a draft
Yeah.
lottery that we're going to try out for this year. Bottom 3 teams all getting a draft. But fuck if I know how well that'll work. I don't know when we're going to do it, what we're going to do. So hopefully the other guy
What
running
I've
it just
done,
up and do it.
what I've done is Dynasty's tough, but like we do like consolation bracket. Like if you win it, you get the most. We do lottery pick two. You get the most ping pong balls if you win the consolation bracket. So like it makes them have to be competitive to the end of the year, and then it avoids a little bit of tanking. But that's redraft dynasty would be tough because maybe the team is just bad, right? And you're like you need the first pick. So it all depends, I guess, on what they actually need.
Yeah, it's a tough balance, and especially because you don't want to have to replace managers in Dynasty. Like that's the biggest thing is like I got one manager that wants out. I'm still going to try to talk him into staying around, but it sounds like he wants out. And if he's the only one that wants out, I got another guy that wants in and likes the team. So it's kind of like, all right, rather do it early than late if you got to change somebody out. But
Sure.
it's kind of a bummer. The season's over for the show, but it's holidays are coming up.
Yeah.
Like, time to hit the mountains, get some snow skiing in. You know,
Yeah. No, it's a bummer, but it'll be in these next 2 weeks, 3 weeks for the playoffs are gonna go by just like that. Like I hope the rest of the games slate this week isn't as brutal as Thursday Night Football. I'm curious because like that week 14 bye, I'm just wondering how these teams will come off of that bye. There's a lot of teams that could come out sluggish. There's a lot of teams that could come out really strong. But I think we're going to see a mixture of everyone because the week 14 bye was such a big bye week.
it was. Yeah, I mean, it was a massive buy, and I think some teams obviously probably needed it. There's some teams that maybe are going to make some adjustments that you couldn't make in the week to week. Maybe it's a little bit of a personnel change here there on
Yeah.
defense, offense, offensive line. Maybe you're going to go with a little bit more zone or pull blocking schemes for
Sure.
your running game. Mix up some route combos. But we've seen teams really come out of the bye well. The Seahawks, they did a great job. Good coaching can take
Yeah.
advantage of the bye week, and you forget about your opponent. You get back to some fundamentals. You fix some issues with the fundamentals that aren't quite going right, and you can come out hot. I mean, mathematically, it looks like the Seahawks are in trouble coming out after that Rams get that win, but they still control their own destiny. If they can knock off the Packers, if they can knock off the Vikings, they're sitting pretty good. But those are tough teams
Sure.
record wise. We'll see how well they match up. And I guess, if you want to be a playoff team, you got to beat playoff teams. So balls in
Yeah.
their
So let's
field
get
right now.
let's get into the players and start our whole cut, our new favorite segment on the show.
Yeah,
One
last
guy
week.
who's kind of the last week, the one guy who's been struggling quite a bit last 2 weeks, Justin Herbert. The Chargers have had some really tough opponents, but they do have Tampa Bay coming up, the number one offense or number one or the worst, I should say, the worst defense against quarterbacks in fantasy. He's scored in regular league 7, 8 points, and then 13 points. Would you be willing to start him? I mean, these are easy defenses you kind of win against. Atlanta, who we saw Sam Darnold go nuclear against, and then Kansas City, who a lot of quarterbacks have had a lot of success against. So Tampa Bay, you start him this week if you need to. Where are you at? Is he a QB1 or you slide him to a QB2?
I think he's right on that cusp. I mean, if you've been playing matchups with your quarterbacks
Yeah.
all year and you're looking at like Herbert or Geno Smith or some of these Anthony Richardson, some of these guys that it's like, oof, do you really trust that? Like Justin Herbert, um, even Kyler Murray, he's had a tough
Yeah.
run this season. So I don't think Herbert's a guy that I would cut. I think he's probably a hold or a start. I think if you're in a situation, a deeper league, he's definitely a start. If you want to have two quarterbacks through the playoffs, it's a solid hold. But I wouldn't be cutting him unless you're in a 10 team or less league.
Yeah, for me, I think if you have a great quarterback that's going to take you to the promised land, I think in my opinion, if you need something else in depth, I would cut Justin Herbert. I just think that offense is kind of changing a little bit more. He's a little banged up, clearly super banged up against Kansas City, was limping a few times. I think Tampa will be a decent matchup, and if you need to play him, I get it. But I just think that right now, I'd rather have guys near his projection, like a Jared Goff or Jordan Love, Baker Mayfield. Those guys, I'd rather have Tua Tagovailoa than I would want a Justin Herbert right now. So if you need to cut someone, that's who I would cut off your team. If you need depth at running back or wide receiver, I think that offense is now going to lean into the heavy bruising running. It just seemed that way a little bit last week against Kansas City, and they weren't putting up big points. And so I just think right now Jim Harbaugh is gonna John Harbaugh is going to go into like run mode. Let's get it down dirty.
Yeah, so that means you like Gus Edwards then? You hanging on to a Gus Edwards for this
I think I
stretch?
hang on to Gus. I think I hang on to Gus Edwards for the goal line touches. They just need to get to the goal line. He would have been horrendous last week if he didn't get the goal line touches. But he's the type of player that gets better as the game goes on. He really is the guy who's like, I'll get you 1 or 2 yards the first, half on carries. I'm not explosive, but by the end, it's hard to tackle him. It's hard to do that. So I like Gus Edwards because he's going to get the goal line carries. I just think he's a really strong goal line back. And if he can sneak in 1 or 2 a game. It can be possible for sure.
Yeah, and the biggest thing for me, like I think, you're right. He's a guy that would be much better if he was getting 20 plus touches as opposed to 12
Sure.
like he's been getting, if you could see those bigger numbers. But when you look at his stats, it's like, 12 carries for 30, 40 yards. Like, I can't do that. But when you watch the game, he actually looks faster than he's looked in a while. He's a guy that can break tackles. Like, he's not going to rip off those 60-yard runs. Like, that's not his game. But if the blocking gets a little bit better or he gets a bad run D, I could see him just churning out 5, 10-yard carries just like clockwork in a game, especially in a second half. They get in a ball control situation, that 6-minute offense. Like, I could see him taking 30 carries for 120, 140 yards. But right now he's getting 12 carries. He's just pretty unlikely he's going to get 12 carries for 60 yards and 2 touchdowns. So
yeah,
he's a guy that you kind of have to hang on to. And J.K. Dobbins, he's on IR. He's supposed to come back, but no guarantees. We haven't heard anything that he's already practicing or anything like that. So I think he's worth holding on to. If you get in a pinch, you could start him at running back or flex. We got.
All right, let's talk about Xavier. Let's talk about your guy Xavier Legette, who dropped the would have been game winning touchdown and watched someone lose $3 million hilariously.
Allegedly.
He
allegedly dropped it. I still want to see the replay. I want to see that in 4K. Like, I want to see if that ball was cradled or not, because in my mind he scored that touchdown. That was what my eyes saw. I want to see the replay. Put it into New York. What's going on? Let's see the replay. That was some BS. You got to at least review it. But he's a good player. He's sharing the field with Adam Thielen. Jalen Coker is going to be back this week. So, solid receiving core. And really the reason he's even on this list is because Bryce Young's looked so much better since getting benched. Yeah. I mean, he really is. He's been running well. He's been mobile. He's been throwing much more accurately, making better decisions, quicker decisions. So I think he's a guy that you should stash right now. I mean, if Thielen were to get hurt, if matchups work out, if your team loses a guy, if you've got a George Pickens or somebody else that just isn't going to give it a go and you got to plug somebody in there, I think he's a much better option than a lot of these guys on the waiver.
Yeah, I like Xavier Legette. I just worry with Jalen Coker coming back, how well they'll do this week. Like, is Bryce Young a high enough volume guy to spread it around?
They're the favorites.
They're favorites.
First time.
It's so great. That's alarming, isn't it?
What's going on here? Put your money on Carolina. Money line, baby. Money line for the Panthers.
It is crazy that a 3-10 Panthers team is favored against, a Cowboys team that should have won last week. Who's ever lost on a block punt? I just never seen anything like it. It's incredible. But I just think Cowboys defense has actually gotten better, and it's more their offense that could not keep it going. Like, the Cowboys defense looked really strong. This will be a big test for Bryce Young. I think you hold on to Legette, see how he mixes in there, but I do think he's a talented player, and I think that wide receiver core is perfect for Bryce Young. Now let's see. This is a really good test for him this week for a team that's gotten a lot healthier on defense.
Yeah, I think it's a good week. I hope that Carolina keeps winning, knock those Cowboys down. I think Bryce Young, much better looking future than it had been even just a month or two ago.
I agree.
Tight end positions up for some guys. Dalton Schultz out there coming out of the bye. Houston Texans, hopefully that offense looks better, or rolling with CJ Stroud. So hoping he's got it. I don't know if he does or not, but we'll see.
Yeah. Dalton Schultz has been such a disappointing trajectory of a tight end, right? It was like climbing with the Dallas Cowboys, and then an incredible start to the season last year with CJ Stroud. Now it's just kind of up and down, and like sometimes not even the lead tight end there. I hope. Well, I think you hold on to him. To your point, like let's see what happens out of the bye week. CJ Stroud is struggling tough, and he needs to find help outside of Nico Collins. And can that be Dalton Schultz, who's been a good safety blanket? I think it needs to be for him, but it's a lot of struggles that CJ Stroud is going through this year. So it's certainly we'll see what happens.
Who would you rather hang on to as a either starting or backup tight end? Schultz or Kyle Pitts?
Can I say neither? No, I would rather do Dalton Schultz just because it's CJ Stroud. It's like, would you rather take CJ Stroud or Kirk Cousins right now? I think that's more of the question for myself. And Kirk Cousins is having one of the worst streaks I've seen from a legitimate quarterback in a long time. Someone so proven to like someone he has done in the past seasons. It's just I don't know when he comes back down and like fixes it all, but no touchdowns in 3 games is rough.
Yeah, no, I'm going to take the talent. I'm going to stick with Kyle Pitts. I just don't think Schultz has the ceiling. Like, if either way, if you're holding a guy as a backup, Pitts has the upside. If Kurt starts getting hot, you might want to play him. And same thing, if you got to start him, I just don't think Schultz has enough of a ceiling to make that big a difference. I think they both could get you 3-4 points, or Schultz at most probably 12. But I think Kyle Pitts could actually put up close to 100 yards. He could put up a couple of touchdowns again. Like, it's going to take Kirk Cousins getting hot, like you said. And so we'll see. And they need it too. Houston can kind of limp into the playoffs most likely. Atlanta's got to win. Like, Tampa Bay has been coming. They've lost, I think, 4 or 6 straight in Atlanta. I haven't heard anyone mention the Falcons in weeks. It's a bad sign for them. And, it's that kind of year where
say the Falcons move to a Michael Penix. Does that make you more does that make Kyle Pitts a better prospect then if they do move to Penix here late in the season? I don't know if it happens, but just say hypothetically, does that make Kyle Pitts a better tight end, but higher ceiling?
Hopefully, but it just Penix is such an unknown right now. I mean, you'd think that he would be better. You'd think it would be a good fit. Like the way he threw the ball at Washington, I would think that would be a great fit for Pitts. He's tall, able to kind of snag it on those fingertips. Like I think those are kind of the balls that Pitts needs, is like finding the right spot. But it's going to be coming out backwards. Your plays are going to be flipped. I think that's a big reason why they haven't made the change. To be honest, is you've got to flip the whole offense like in a mirror. So it's a tough transition mid-season, but if at some point they get eliminated from the playoffs, I don't think there's any way you can justify starting anyone but Michael Penix.
Yeah. That's another player, Sincere McCormick, still my favorite name of the year. Name the starting running back. Amir Abdullah is going to back him up. I think obviously it's either start or hold. Are you willing to take a chance to start him in your flex as a starter?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's at this point of the year, if you're considering it, then I think it's worth it. I mean, if you're looking at these other guys in that range, I mean, I'd start him over Gus Edwards. I'd start him over Nick Chubb. I'd start him over, just about anybody that's a starter that hasn't looked good. Like there's, probably right on that cusp, like Najee Harris. Like I'd probably start him over Najee Harris. He's kind of sharing that ball. Like he's got, the backfield to himself. They're going to give him a run. He's looked good. So why not? I think you got to roll with it and see what happens.
Yeah, and he's averaging 5 yards per carry, like in all these games that he's played in. Obviously, this one was the biggest.
Yeah.
He's like a big burly dude, but he's fast and he's quick and he can do a lot. And that they're trying to look for a spark there, and if they're not, they're trying to see if this guy's the future running back for them. So why not give him opportunities? I think you hold this week just to see what happens, but he certainly could be placed in the last 2 weeks if you're still in the playoffs like that. We'll see what happens. But he had success against the Broncos, great defense as well. So I do like Sincere McCormick going into it. Like this is a sneaky pick.
Yeah, it's do or die. If you need someone, I'd roll the dice with him. I mean, you're not going to start him over, guys you've been starting all year, but even like a Tyrone Tracy, I mean, he's kind of fallen
Yeah,
off. It's hard to project what's going to happen with a horrible offense. There at least Las Vegas seems like they have a game plan, and it's just run it through McCormick, see what happens, burn some clock. So we got some
for
dynasty
sure.
guys too. Start, hold, cut for them going into the off season. Basically, let's assume you may have been eliminated from the playoffs, or you got spots on your bench for these guys. Not guys that you're necessarily going to start. Maybe you are if got into a pinch. But see what we've got as we got one more show, so we got to give people what they may need. Brendan
Yeah,
Strange taking over as Evan Ingram just up and went on IR earlier this week. So he looked good in spot starts, about as good as you can look as a backup tight end. He had some games with big yardage numbers, scored a few touchdowns. Unfortunately, now he's got to do it with Mac Jones.
yeah, it's tough. And you're right. He was fine with Trevor Lawrence. Mac Jones has targeted Evan Ingram a decent amount. I think Strange is such a big target that he'll get red zone opportunities. But the problem is, are they going to be red zone opportunities? And is he going to be a piece of this offense for years, for the future when they just signed Evan Ingram to a big deal in the offseason. So I think you can potentially, if you need him in deep dynasty, start him here. But I don't know what the future would hold for someone like Brendan Strange outside of this season or spot starts.
Yeah, he's kind of start or cut, really. I mean, I think it's
Right.
one of the two. Like if you grabbed him because you need to start a tight end, then fair enough. But if you don't need to start him, I don't think he's worth a hold. I'd go ahead and cut him loose. And Adam Thielen's a tough one. These older players this time of year, it's kind of the same type of thing. Like if you're starting him,
Right.
I'd start him. But if he's on your bench, then I think you're better off holding, a younger guy on that same team than Jalen Coker. I mean, I'd rather hold Coker than Adam Thielen, but I, could see cutting starting Adam Thielen over Coker. So it's kind of a weird,
Yeah. Totally.
Coker's more of a hard hold for me, whereas Thielen's more of a start or cut.
Yeah, if you're out of the playoffs, like Thielen, man, I don't know. At 34, how many more years does he really have? Like I would rather hold on to someone like Jalen Coker or even just like a rookie wide receiver that's getting looks late in the season. I just think at 34 it's tough to play that position any longer than 35, even 36, especially like Adam Thielen's a good athlete, but it just catches up to you eventually.
Clearly, he's an incredible athlete. He's still in the NFL at
Yeah.
34 as a receiver. I mean,
Yeah.
he's got something there that we didn't know he had. Like, and I think he was pretty much undrafted or late round. I mean,
Yeah.
sixth,
So
seventh round.
he went undrafted. He did the supplemental draft where he signed up for a combine, and the reason why he was able to try out for teams is because he ran a 4.3 out of a D3 college. Like he didn't even go to the combine. He didn't get drafted at all. Is that crazy? The only reason
Yeah,
he got a tryout is because he ran a 4.3, which
yeah,
he's pretty good.
yeah. And he's turned out to be probably one of the best undrafted wide
Yeah,
receivers. I mean, we've
solid.
seen certainly recently, but possibly even ever.
Yeah.
Now we got another name that is going to be up there with all-time names. Stone Smart. Guy's middle name is Cole. Stone Cole Smart. Clearly, his
Their
parents
parents.
were down for some
Yeah,
316. Like, just,
yeah.
bang. Like, I hope he scores a touchdown and does the bang the Budweisers and dump them.
Yeah.
I mean, you
Yeah.
can't make this stuff up. This time of year, Will Dissly out for extended time. I think it could be more. I was, watching him in that night game, and man, I thought he was really talented. Like he played half a game. Like he looked
Right.
great on his catches. He's tall. He's lean. He reminds me of kind of an in between of Isaiah Likely and Darren Waller. That same kind of thing
Yeah.
where he got switched. He played quarterback and wide receiver in college. Now he's moved to tight end, taking him a couple of years, but man, they need passing options there in LA, and I think he's going to look really good for these next few weeks. Good enough that I could see him taking over that tight end job in LA next year, if not the starting tight end, because they want a starting tight end that may be more of that, road grade blocking type tight end. But I think he's
Yeah.
going to be that move tight end, that guy that goes in motion, that guy that gets outside. He's definitely a hold for me, or even a start if you need to. I don't think this is a guy that you want to let go until we see what's up with him for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and I think the really impressive things that you should take away from that game Sunday against Kansas City was Justin Herbert was throwing into like double coverage to him, and that guy was getting up and getting it. Like that is a good sign that your quarterback trusts this young, tight end stepping in. And so it looks like they've had some good rapport in practice. And I mean, Chargers haven't had a really solid tight end since Antonio Gates. I think it's time for them to not have to reinvent the wheel and go get the guy who's an athlete and can go up and get it, because the wide receiver situation for the Chargers, while Quentin Johnson has taken steps, he still has his issues. He's still not one of the better wide receivers that he was drafted to be. And so you lean on your tight ends, and if you have someone like that, it's a mismatch almost every single time.
Yeah, I mean, I think they could just run so many more two tight end sets, motion him out, line him up wide receiver. And being a former quarterback, quarterbacks love that. You know that he understands coverage, he understands spots in the zone, where the ball should be thrown. And he looked like he had a really good feel. I'm excited that I was able to pick him up in one of my dynasty leagues. Can't wait to watch him these last few weeks. Mac Jones
Yeah, let's
starting.
forward. I was gonna say one more tight end real quick. Let's, instead of really young, let's go really old. Zach
Okay.
Ertz.
Ertz, yeah. I
Uh,
mean, starter cut.
that guy seems like he should be like 40, right? Like it just seems like he's been in the league forever.
Yeah, I'm really rooting for him to retire after Dallas Goedert. Like I want his career to just continue on forever. But it would be nice if he could let another tight end emerge behind him. We saw it in Arizona with Trey McBride. It'd be nice if he
Right.
could take a week or two off so we could see what we've got in Ben Sinnott, another tight end that I've been holding on to since he was dropped, and he hasn't done a damn
It seems
thing. I just
personal.
like really would like to, well, it's like a guy goes off in the preseason. It seems like you might want to bring him out. I'm hoping they're holding him out for the playoff run. Who knows? It's hard to know with tight ends because there's so much involved in the position. Like it's not just a receiver, so it may just be his blocking that's not quite there. Even whatever it is, mastery of the playbook, and just Zach Ertz is so consistent. But Ertz is definitely a start or a cut for me. If you absolutely need him, hold on to him, but he's not a guy that you should have on your bench.
For me, I definitely, he's a for sure start in redraft and dynasty. I think Jalen Daniels just loves that. I mean, talking about a safety blanket, that guy's throwing it to him in like crazy cover. Remember that 2 point conversion where Zach Ertz is blanketed and he still threw it to him? He somehow kept his feet in. I just think Jalen Daniels really likes this guy. I think he could have another in tight ends. Like it's a little different. We've seen tight ends play into their late 30s. I know he's 34. I think he has at least 3 more years of just above mediocre numbers if he stays on Washington. To your point, unless they move directions, but Jalen Daniels clearly likes this guy, so I think he's a start. And I mean, I think maybe he could sit on your bench for another year or two, and then I mean, I'd be shocked if he's past that.
Yeah, he might go off for 5 for 40 this week. Like he, a touchdown and a 2 point conversion. I mean, just blow. He
Dude,
could
that's
blow
huge for
up,
tight end.
save your week. Like that. He's got a ceiling and he's got a floor, and they're pretty close
Yeah,
together.
that's true.
So
Yeah.
sometimes that's good.
Are you,
I don't know if it's kind of a small house there for Zach Ertz, but you play what you got this
yeah,
time of
you
year.
meant you mentioned Mac Jones. Man, he is in a tough situation. And we've already talked a little bit about that. Uh, I picked him up to be a backup because in my other dynasty league, because I have no backup right now. Dak Prescott was my backup, and he's hurt, and like some of these rookies that I have are just sitting on the bench. So I'm desperate for a backup just in case something happens to Jordan Love. Knock on wood. I don't think it will, but even that makes me really nervous about having Mac Jones as a backup in a dynasty league. I just he's playing smart, but I don't think he's playing enough to be a starter.
Yeah, no, I mean, I
or
think he's
even
kind of a hold
potentially
for
hold.
a week or two, but this one, he's definitely a cut before the season ends.
Yeah,
Once you're eliminated from the playoffs, cut his ass, get somebody else in there, a younger guy,
yeah,
somebody that's, going to be able to play for you next year, get ahead of next season once you're eliminated. No point in hanging on to him. He's not going to be a starter next year in the NFL. He probably will remain a backup in the NFL for quite some time, but he's not going to be a starter. No team's going to go out and trade for him. Nobody's going to want to build a program around him. He's not going to have a Jared Goff resurgence. It's just one of those things. He could develop as a backup and maybe someday come in, look good, hold it down, perform a little better than he has right now, but just doesn't have the physical tools to get it done at a high level. And these days, you got to be able to run if you're going to be, mediocre with
yeah.
your passing numbers. And he just doesn't
He's
have
not very fast.
legs. It doesn't have arm. It's like being really accurate isn't that great if you can't throw it deep. It's got to get more done. And he might as well just go out there and chuck it to Brian Thomas every time because that's about all that's left there in Jacksonville. It's, not a great offense anyway. So
I
can't be
know,
all his
like when
fault, but he's never going to have a ceiling that's
to
impressive.
your point, you've made this statement many times. There's also just not enough openings for Mac Jones next year. There's not a lot of openings for any of these quarterbacks next year. Like Gardner Minshew, those guys that like have been cussed like spot starts or like cussed like, hey, we'll take the reins for this year for rookies. I think a lot of guys are rather run a Shador or Cam Ward right away than to put in a Mac Jones type now. Anyway, so there's no real space for these backup quarterbacks in the league. Like maybe Justin Fields, maybe, but I just don't see it.
No, I mean, I think Justin Fields might have the best shot just because I could see him going to one of these organizations that drafts a running quarterback. The team that drafts Shadur
Right.
Sanders, I'd like to put in Justin Fields and start Justin Fields for the first 4 weeks. Let him take those hits
Yeah.
while your team gets acclimated, while your O line gets acclimated. But I mean, it's hard to. Yeah, I think you have Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, all competing for two or three jobs in, Pittsburgh. And, maybe there was a couple other teams that I've heard mentioned that I was like, oh, I guess I could see, that team being good enough. The Colts,
Right.
possibly. The Titans is another team that in theory could grab a guy like that and start him over Will Levis, thinking that because the Titans D has actually played pretty well. They do have more pieces in
Yeah.
place, and that division's bad enough. The Saints is another team that might say, you know what, we're not good enough with Derek Carr, but we don't want to just rebuild around,
Right.
Spencer Rattler. So let's go ahead and just go with like Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson, but
Right.
there really aren't enough spots. I mean, you're next year, everyone's going to be like, wait, he's not starting anymore. Like Aaron Rodgers retired,
Right.
Russell Wilson retired, Kirk Cousins, same draft class as Russell Wilson, and going into this season, it's like, oh, okay, Kirk Cousins is going to be in the league 5 years longer than Russell Wilson. And now it's like, I wouldn't be shocked if Russell Wilson played 2 or 3 years longer than Kirk Cousins. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't pay Kirk
Russ
that
is
type of
definitely
money to be a
safest right
backup.
there.
You know,
Yeah.
if, if he doesn't look better this last month of the year, they're going to try to trade him. But who's going to be interested in trading for Kirk Cousins? Unless maybe it's the new organization with the Jets. There's limited
Right.
spots. So for these guys, it's going to be moving
Especially the way
chairs.
Kirk Cousins is playing right now. Like the way Kirk Cousins is playing, that's hard to trade. Aaron Rodgers is hard to sell yourself. Russell Wilson's obviously having a great year, and I can't imagine if like Pittsburgh does a great job in this run that they're gonna move on to Russell Wilson. Like, all right, we finally found someone who's been able to run this offense since Ben Roethlisberger. So he's shrink the Pittsburgh Steelers away, and now what do you have is pretty tough situations for veteran quarterbacks.
Yeah. No, I mean, the Raiders need a quarterback, but they seem like they'll draft one. The Giants are going to draft one. Daniel Jones definitely isn't starting next year. I mean, maybe in the XFL this spring, but it's going
Yeah,
to be tough sledding out there. And it's tough for running backs to get a spot. There's lots of really good running backs that are the second, third, fourth string running backs for teams this year, even
right.
fifth, sixth string running backs. All of a sudden, we've seen Las Vegas bring in Sincere McCormick. He was what, the fifth string running back to start the
Right.
year? It's tough for Sean
Yeah.
Tucker too. I mean, this guy's a third running back, but he looks good enough to be a starting running back somewhere, but there's just not a spot for him. So he's a guy that I
Yeah.
like holding, but I also could see cutting him. I just don't see a path with Bucky Irving looking so good to end the season. He's a little banged up now, so but I wouldn't feel comfortable starting Tucker here in the playoffs either.
Yeah, and with Rashad White there as well, like it's just tough to find the mouths to feed. And yes, you're not rooting for injury, but you need an injury for it to work, right? So I think Sean Tucker's talented. He's still in his second year, so if you have a taxi, that maybe is where you stick him for however whatever your settings are. But Sean Tucker, it's just going to take a lot to happen. Like you said, the Sincere McCormicks of the world don't happen very often. And after this season, there's not been a lot of star running backs that have gone down. So it's tough to try to see a third or fourth round or fourth string guy jump to the top. This doesn't happen very often.
Only in Vegas.
Only in Vegas. Someone put in a hit. Something happened. All right,
Yeah, you
before we
need
go,
new running back and quarterback room for next year. Probably new head coach. They've already got a new owner. We'll see what GQ Tom does. Bring in the
yeah,
avocados.
it would be hilarious if they just brought in Deion Sanders, Shador Sanders, and then just ran it back with Colorado. We'll see what happens.
Probably bring in the
Before we
other
go,
Sanders too, right? Why not? If you're gonna
why not Shiloh?
just
Let's
yeah,
bring
sign
Shiloh
him
as
as an
well
undrafted free agent, probably. Or late
and go
last
trade for
seventh
Travis
round
Hunter.
and trade for
Maybe they're
Travis
like,
Hunter.
yeah, and
Yeah.
just
Trade that D end of theirs for Travis Hunter. Like we'll see. I don't
it'd
know.
be a smart pick. 3 first-round picks for Travis Hunter. Okay, before we go, predictions for your fantasy playoffs. You said you're in 2, correct?
I have two buys and I have two that I'm playing this week with
Okay, so
matchups,
how
like
many
4 or 5.
championships? How many championships do you walk away from after week 17, or walk away with?
Uh, I'm gonna say one this year. I don't have confidence in my two teams that are playing right now, mainly because there's better teams in those divisions.
Sure.
One of them's got a shot. The other one not so much. But uh, one of the two bye teams I think is gonna get through. I feel like hopefully it's my dynasty team that goes back to back. The other one is a league that I've been playing since '05 and have never won.
Yeah.
So that would be
Oh yeah.
great to get the monkey off my back. I'd probably spend 100, 100 less hours a year listening to fantasy advice if I finally won that league because I just cannot figure it out, can't quite get it done, and it's all my fault that we haven't changed the settings, we haven't added teas, we haven't done a damn thing different. I just keep trying
Yeah.
different things. I've made it to the championship a few times, it just never quite worked. So gotta just kind of keep grinding. Had buys the last 2 years, so it is what it. If you get a buy, your team's good enough. All you can do is hope that chips fall where they do and things work out. I got Saquon, so I mean Saquon could just go nuts
That's
in 16 and 17. I'd probably be all right, but I lost the week that he went off for like 50 earlier this year. So
crazy.
fantasy is a fickle game.
Yeah, my friend actually beat a team at Josh Allen last week because he had Jamar Chase on a Monday night. He was able to beat him by like
Wow.
3 points.
Wow.
I I think I'll win one championship out of two. Maybe I'm the one seed. I've had like a really strong team in one dynasty. And then my main league that I've won, I'm the same with you. It was like I hadn't won all these years. I've had the best teams. One year I had like the team of the year. I had Kamara, I had Christian McCaffrey, I had Antonio Brown, all on the same team, and I could not win the championship. And I had the most points. So things happen, but sometimes it's my worst team that gets me to the championship, which that's fantasy football for you.
Yeah. Yeah. All about what happens these next 3 weeks. Good luck to everybody out there. Good luck to you. Good luck to me. We'll see what happens. But we got our last show of the year, and hopefully it doesn't beat us up too bad.
Yeah. All right. I'm Robbie Chan signing off.
Geoff with a G, ready to roll. Let's do this.
All right. Let's do it, man. One more.